everyone. Having a discussion about biology means having a discussion about cells, since it is these cells that form the basic unit of structure and function of all living organisms. The cell that is visible on your screen is a far more complex structure than you have seen in your previous years when you were studying biology. And we got to know that these structures or these complexities exist within a cell because we were able to look at these cells under a microscope. But why bother looking at them under a microscope and then figuring out the different structures that exist inside the cell and the different details that can be understood and studied about the cell? Why is the cell such an important structure within any living organism? It's because these cells behave like a small compartment where the chemistry of life is allowed to occur. So, the smallest structure inside which all the reactions that are occurring inside your body can occur is a cell, which is why the cell is considered the basic fundamental unit of life. In order to understand how life occurs or what happens inside different organisms that is keeping them alive, it is equally important to know the structure and functions that occur inside the cell. However, these basic unit or fundamental unit of life are so small that they cannot be seen directly by a simple naked eye. The smallest length that the eye can pick and figure out that this is a different object is between 50 to 100 micrometer. I'll explain what the term micrometer is, but assume that that is a very, very small unit of measurement or length that the naked eye can see. But the cells are even smaller than that. They usually fall into the category of about 5 to 40 micrometer, which makes them extremely small and impossible for the eye to see without any special equipment. And the special equipment that help us see these structures or cells are called microscopes. Microscopes are devices that help us enlarge the cell that we're looking at, and then by enlarging them, they not only increase the size of these small cells for us to see them under the microscope, but they also make it possible for us to see the structures that can be found within a cell. These structures that are found inside the cell, such as the nucleus that you are already aware of, are called organelles. The term organelle is coming from the term organs because these small organelles or these structures within the cell have a specialized function, and they carry that function out within that structure of themselves. So whatever is happening inside the nucleus is not going to happen inside the cytoplasm, and whatever is happening inside the cytoplasm does not happen inside the nucleus. So there is clear compartmentalization and division of labor occurring within the cell, and so each structure within the cell is behaving like a small mini organ, which is why it's called an organelle. And we want to study these organelles in great detail if we have to understand the function of a cell, since it is these individual functions that are being carried out by different organelles that come up together to give us the knowledge of the function of a single cell. And in order to study them, it is microscopes that makes it possible for us to see these organelles. Scientists that are currently studying cells make use of two types of microscope: the light microscope and the electron microscope. Both these microscopes use a form of radiation which focuses the image of the specimen for the viewer to see. The details inside each cell and each image that can be viewed under a microscope closely depends on the kind of radiation that is being used to view that specimen. Light microscope, for example, uses visible light, which is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, as a form of its radiation. The electromagnetic spectrum consists of many different kinds of waves, but within that electromagnetic spectrum, the visible light is the only part of the spectrum that can be viewed or seen by the naked eye. The wavelength of the waves found within the electromagnetic spectrum of the visible light falls between 400 nanometer and 700 nanometer. In contrast to this, an electron microscope uses an electron beam as its source of radiation. An electron beam is basically electrons that are moving at a very fast speed. Electrons are negatively charged particles that are orbiting around the nucleus of an atom. And as soon as the atom in which these electrons are orbiting ends up gaining a lot of energy, these electrons end up leaving the orbit that they were rotating in. These electrons are now called free electrons, and free electrons, when moving at a very fast speed, can behave like electromagnetic radiation does. There is an advantage of using electrons as a source of radiation or an electron beam as a source of radiation because they have a very small wavelength. And when you will study about something called resolution, you learn that this will have a significant impact on the quality of resolution of an electron microscope versus that of a light microscope. Using an electron beam as a source of radiation also has the advantage that that beam can be focused very easily using electromagnets because the beam is a negatively charged beam because electrons have a negative charge. If you use something positive, it will end up pulling that beam towards itself, and similarly if you end up using something that is negatively charged, it will end up repelling that charge. This gives electron beam a clear advantage over other forms of electromagnetic radiation that can be found within the electromagnetic spectrum. Because while those wavelengths or waveforms can have a really short wavelength compared to that of light, it can be extremely difficult to focus them. And without being able to focus them, we will not be able to form an image out of the specimen that we're trying to view. An electron beam wavelength can actually start from a minimum of 1 nanometer. Compare that to the light's wavelength, which has a minimum wavelength of 400 nanometer and cannot be found to have any wavelength that is shorter than 400 nanometer. I know I'm bringing up the wavelengths and the number of the wavelength up again and again, and right now you will not understand the significance of why I'm doing that. But once you study resolution and magnification, you will see how the difference in the wavelength has a great and significant impact on these two quantities, which helps us differentiate which type of microscope to use when and which kind of microscope can give us better quality images with better details versus which one cannot. For example, when we first start viewing cells under a microscope, we made use of a light microscope. In doing so, the first structure that we could really appreciate was a nucleus and a nucleoli, along with the nuclear envelope that surrounds the nucleus. The nucleus stained the most prominently because of the chromatin that is found within the DNA molecules also located inside the nucleus. And when the slides are stained or when the specimen is being stained to view under a light microscope, the chromatin ends up taking most of the color, which is why it looks like the most conspicuous organelle viewed under the light microscope. When viewing a cell under a light microscope, both the animal cell and plant cell show the nucleus along with the cytoplasm, mitochondria, which is a sausage-shaped organelle that is found inside the cell and has a massive role to play in aerobic respiration, is also visible under the light microscope. Please don't be too scared if you're hearing names of structures inside a cell that you've never heard of before. They are covered in our lesson on cell structure, but the purpose of discussing these organelles or the names of these organelles is that you are aware of the different organelles that are visible under a light microscope as well as an electron microscope. Another structure that's called centriole is visible near the nucleus of the cell as a tiny dot under a light microscope, and it is only visible in an animal cell, as plant cells do not have any centriole. A very good light microscope also reveals a structure that's called a Golgi body. It looks like a stacked flattened sacs. It basically looks like a structure that has a lot of stacked structures one on top of the other. And this was not initially visible in a low quality light microscope, but with the passage of time, as the quality of light microscopes improved, they were also able to see Golgi body under a light microscope. And this was a structure that was visible both under um, a light microscope for an animal cell as well as a plant cell. Within a plant cell, a light microscope revealed a vacuole surrounded by a membrane, which is called a tonoplast, along with the cell wall that surrounds every single plant cell. The cell wall had little tiny pores or gaps between itself, through which the cytoplasm of that cell could pass from one cell to the next and connected one cell with the other cell. So, cell wall with that little tiny pore was visible under the light microscope. This region where there is a lack in continuation of the cell wall and the cytoplasm of one cell links to the cytoplasm of another cell is called plasmodesmata if you're talking about a plural, or plasmodesma if you talk about a single pore like structure. Finally, under a light microscope, you can also appreciate chloroplast and some very tiny grains of grana, which basically houses the pigment chlorophyll, which gives the plant a green color and is the site of photosynthesis because it is the chlorophyll that is responsible for trapping sunlight during the process of photosynthesis. When the same cell was viewed under an electron microscope, the scientists were almost shocked to see so many new structures appear uh, under their eyes or right before their eyes that was not visible in the light microscope. And also, the structures that were visible under the light microscope actually went on to show that they had so much more detail that could have been appreciated. The most surprising and unexpected organelle that they came across was actually something that's called an endoplasmic reticulum, which is an extensive system of membrane running right through the cytoplasm from the nucleus through the entire or almost all of the cytoplasm. And that was something that was not even closely or remotely visible under a light microscope. We also were able to appreciate the fact that the membrane that surrounds the nucleus is actually not a single layer of membrane, but rather is a double layer of membrane. Along with this, the centriole, which was only visible as a tiny dot under the light microscope, showed up to be a structure that contained two different centrioles that are closely located at right angles to each other, very close to the nucleus of the cell. We were now also able to appreciate very tiny dot like structures that are called ribosomes and have a role to play in the synthesis of proteins inside the cell, which was never ever visible under a light microscope. The presence of cytoskeleton was another such thing that was not visible under the light microscope. The mitochondria also showed up to be a very complex looking structure that had a double membrane structure, and that double membrane on the inner side was actually thrown into many folds. And similarly, just how mitochondria end up showing far more character than was visible under the light microscope, so did the chloroplast. Inside the light microscope, we could only appreciate a chloroplast like it was just some grain, and only some tiny little grana were visible within the chloroplast, and that grana looked like small grains inside the chloroplast. But under the electron microscope, we could appreciate that the chloroplast, like the mitochondria, also has a double membrane, and the structure inside the chloroplast was also visible under great detail, and we could appreciate a system of membrane running inside the chloroplast, and the grana was appreciated as a stack of membrane within the chloroplast. But something that was visible under a light microscope and is not visible under an electron microscope was chromosomes. Chromosomes are structures that contain DNA inside the nucleus and help control the cell, all of its activities. But they are only visible when a cell is dividing, which is a process happening only inside cells that are living in nature. But when we are viewing specimens under an electron microscope, we can only do so under a vacuum. Because if the electron beam is to pass through a regular environment, the air molecules will constantly bump into the electrons and would cause the electron beam to diffuse and disperse. And since we don't want that, and we want the electron beam to remain focused, we put the entire machinery or mechanism of electron beam or the electron microscope under a vacuum so that no air molecules can interfere with the electron beam. But having a vacuum in an electron microscope ends up leading to significant consequences. And these are that in a vacuum, water evaporates and boils. And since the cell is made up of cytoplasm, which is around 70 to 80% water, that means the cells are made up of water. So, if we are to look at cells under an electron microscope in a vacuum, the water is going to boil in a vacuum. And if it does that, boiling will cause the disruption of the structures of the cell. And so, to prevent that, when we are making specimens to be viewed under an electron microscope, we first kill them and preserve them. These cells are not just killed but also desiccated and lack any water so that the cell does not boil and does not have structures that are completely disoriented than the original structures that are found within itself. And when you kill the cell, that means that cell is no longer to carry out any processes of life. In case it cannot carry out processes of life, cell division is one such process that can only be carried out by living cells. And it is during cell division that chromosomes inside the nucleus become visible. So, under an electron microscope, you can never appreciate a chromosome because the cells that you are viewing under an electron microscope are already dead. Whereas under the light microscope, you can view at specimens that are living, and since cell division is a process that is only going to be carried out by living cells, that cell will be able to give you a good picture of chromosomes because that is going to be the only time when the chromosomes are going to be visible in a cell. So there is one structure called chromosomes that is going to be visible under a light microscope but are never going to be visible under an electron microscope. Within the electron microscopes, there are two types of electron microscopes that are available for use. The first one is a transmission electron microscope, and the second one is a scanning electron microscope. In a transmission electron microscope, as the name suggests, the beam of electron passes through or transmits through the specimen you're looking at, and only the transmitted electron beams are picked up by the screen on which the image is forming. This also makes me highlight another point that electron beams are like the electromagnetic radiation, not visible to the normal naked eye. Only the visible light spectrum from the electromagnetic spectrum is visible to us. Everything else is beyond our vision capabilities. Similarly, electron beams cannot be viewed by our eyes directly. So, in order to pick up images by the electron beam or images that are formed by the electron beam, we put a fluorescent screen in front of the light in front of the electron beam that is passing through, and as soon as the electron beam touches that fluorescent screen, that area lights up, and that ends up giving the final result to be a black and white picture instead of any colored picture that you normally can see under a light microscope. And the stains used to stain the specimen are heavy metals because these heavy metals block the transmission of electron beam. So if an organelle or structure inside the cell has taken up the stain very intensely, that stain is going to block the transmission of electron beam and the screen, or the fluorescent screen, is going to remain black in that region. But if there are organelles that have not taken up the stain as darkly or as intensely and allows some of the electron beam to pass through it, that electron beam is going to be picked up by the fluorescent screen, and that area is going to be slightly white or slightly gray. So the final image that appears on that fluorescent screen is similar to how you normally have your X-ray, with areas of complete black shade with and along with areas of gray color along with areas of white color. But that's how an image from a transmission electron microscope forms. In case it is a scanning electron microscope, electron beam is reflected from the surface of organelles of the cell being viewed under that scanning electron microscope. And only the radiation that was reflected back is picked up by the fluorescent screen, whereas others that were not reflected back or were absorbed by the metal stain does not get reflected back onto the fluorescent screen and are not part of the image. This ends up creating a 3D structure for the specimen and allows us to appreciate the surface structure of any specimen we're viewing under that electron microscope, because it helps create depth of field in the image that is being created. But while it is giving us more detail in terms of the surface structure of any specimen we're viewing, it also has the disadvantage that it has a lower resolution than a transmission electron beam and has a resolution of around 3 to 20 nanometers, whereas the transmission electron beam usually has a resolution of zero point 0.5 nanometers. But please keep in mind that this is still much higher than a regular light microscope, whose maximum resolution was only 200 nanometers. And to quickly draw a comparison between light microscope and electron microscope, light microscope uses light as its form of radiation, whereas electron microscope uses electron beam as its radiation source. In terms of resolution, the light microscope has a lower resolution of about 200 nanometers compared to that of 0.5 nanometers of electron microscope. In regards to magnification, the light microscope can magnify an image around 1500 times from its actual size, whereas an electron microscope can do that 500,000 times. So that also is a no comparison and no brainer that the electron microscope also wins there. But in case of the specimen that can be viewed under the microscope, the light microscope has the ability to allow you to view a specimen that is living or dead. But in an electron microscope, you can only view that specimen under the microscope. The stains used in the electron microscope are heavy metals and only end up producing a black and white image, whereas the stains that are used to create the specimen for a light microscope allow natural colors to be observed under the microscope. And lastly, the last piece of advantage that the electron microscope can have over light microscope is that in respect or in regard to the depth of field, the electron microscope can produce a 2D and a 3D image, whereas a light microscope only produces 2D images. And it goes without saying that if electron microscope is better in so many terms, it must be more expensive than a regular light microscope. And since it needs to work under a vacuum and requires special specimen preparation, you need special skills or people that have these special skills to prepare the specimen in order to view certain specimen under the electron microscope. Whereas under the light microscope, you do not require such expertise of skills, and any regular person can create slides and view specimen under the light microscope. Now, I understand that you will not have understood what resolution is and what magnification is. So we will be discussing these in our next few lessons. And after having a look at those lessons, what I've said about resolution and magnification in this particular lesson will make a lot more sense to all of you. But before we can discuss magnification and resolution in great detail, we should be aware of different measurement units that come into play when we will be discussing magnification and resolution. So, let's end this lesson here and let's move on to our next lesson, which is going to focus on units of measurements.